Hey again, everybody. Jeremy Plonk with First Bet and Express Bet, joined by Jeff Siegel. It's time for It's Official. After a big weekend, Pegasus World Cup in South Florida, we've got another big weekend coming with not 3 as scheduled, but 4 Kentucky Derby preps because the Southwest at Oaklawn was pushed back from last week to this Saturday. So we've got coast-to-coast Kentucky Derby preps coming up this weekend and a big weekend in the Pegasus World Cup to recap. Jeff, let's get into it. What do you say this week?
Well, I was right about some things, wrong about most things. One thing I did state, though, with conviction, was I didn't think National Review was a good gamble in a race in which he didn't figure to make the lead. And he didn't make the lead. And then he goes out and runs the race of his life and all of a sudden becomes arguably the best older horse in the country, and running a race that I, quite frankly, did not think he was capable of running. Mm-hmm. But then I've been wrong before, sometimes with the Baffert horses, even though I shouldn't be because he's out here training. I should be able to figure that out. But I was just blown away with not only the race that he ran, but the way he won it, Jeremy. And I tip my hat to this colt. Of course, he did win the Preakness last year, but he did it gate to wire. And a lot of horses can look better when they get that kind of trip. I ran into Baffert on Sunday. I said, "Are you going anywhere with this horse?" Which is to say, are you going to go to Saudi Arabia or Dubai? He said, "No, I think I'll just stay here." And I think that that's probably the right thing to do because the Breeders' Cup is here in California again. Right. And I do think that, the way he ran, let's look at the big picture and let's try to keep this horse in the same kind of form at the end of the year that he is right now, which is absolutely spectacular.
We've got 5 topics for you this week. We've already hinted at the first. It's our Pegasus postscript, recapping what happened at the Pegasus World Cup card Saturday at Gulfstream Park. All-time record handle for the 8-year event. And the winner, National Treasure, as Jeff said, last year's Preakness winner, back to the winner's circle in grand style, not on the front end.
Still plenty of hopes here in the Pegasus World Cup. National Treasure has come away with the lead. Senor Buscador, he's still closing down the center. There's an 1/8 of a mile to go, and National Treasure with work to do. Senor Buscador takes aim on the outside. They come past the 8th pole. Jockey John on the inside. It's still National Treasure holding on. Down the center, Senor Buscador is running out of time. National Treasure would not be denied. National Treasure wins the Pegasus World Cup. Senor Buscador just ran out of racetrack. Third is Troopy in 1:50-2.
So the David and Goliath in the stretch run there, you had the big, connections, the Preakness winner, the favorite with National Treasure. Then you had Senor Buscador, the horse from New Mexico and West Texas, and who's traveled all around. He had his chance, Jeff. He had dead aim on him, and I know he got Pete Aiello kind of, up in the mic there because he was making a menacing move. Just not good enough to get by in this particular case with National Treasure. But good effort from Senor Buscador, the runner-up. They're probably going to Saudi Arabia now, the way it sounds. He got invited after the race. They called the owner and said, come to Saudi Arabia for the $20 million Saudi Cup. Senor Buscador, he's not getting back to New Mexico anytime soon.
No. But I'll tell you what, I watched the race. I mean, the trainer even thought that Senor Buscador was going to win at the 8th pole, and he didn't get up. And that, to me, I give full credit to National Treasure for being able to hang on and fight him off, because after taking all the dirty work, still finding more when it needed. To me, National Treasure ran unbelievably well. And the thing about National Treasure is he had to go out and put away a very, very high-class fast horse. It wasn't like some 99-1 shot that he went by. I mean, Hoist the Gold actually put up a fight there for a while, and then to get by a horse as good as Hoist the Gold, National Treasure to me showed something that I'm not sure even Bob thought he could do, because he came out riding. You remember the start of that race? We talked about the race within a race.
Yeah.
And Pratt came out riding with the intent of going to the front, and he midway into the clubhouse he says, "I don't think I can do that. So let's go to plan B and sit second and sit behind a very fast horse who carried his speed to the top of the stretch." And then National Treasure went by him. I mean, and then Senor Buscador, who sat back and had dead aim and couldn't get there. But I will say one thing about Senor Buscador. Don't feel less of him because he couldn't beat the National Treasure. No other closer mounted a rally either. I mean, he was the only one who was running late because they were worn out, chasing the hot splits. I think Senor Buscador would have a reasonably decent chance in Saudi Arabia based on this race, as long as he runs back to this race.
Yeah.
The race came up very, very strong. The buyer number, triple-digit buyer, was good. I think National Treasure, Senior Buscador, right now, as good as we have in the States right now for older horses.
Yeah, we saw Newgrange then win out on the West Coast, San Pasqual, towards maybe the big cap, maybe a road trip for that one to Dubai, Saudi Arabia. This time of year, there is a lot of money overseas, and that's going to tempt people to send their horses there at the mercy of the first quarter or half of the domestic season. And then, of course, the handicap division is going to pick back up in the summer towards the Breeders' Cup. So we will see who heads overseas out of this race. Really disappointing effort from First Mission. I mean, I got the trip, I thought, right? I mean, we talked about the two speed horses in here, and if National Treasure can't get to the front over Hoist the Gold, we thought he would spit the bit. We're wrong the way this race, or I was wrong the way this race turned out, but the setup, usually when you have the setup right, you feel good about your handicapping. I got the setup exactly right in this race, but First Mission got the trip, was like paddling on the backstretch to even keep up in fourth or fifth instead of sitting a comfortable third or fourth, and he was out of there. He was terrible in this particular spot. O'Connor didn't come with the run you would expect from the back of the pack. Again, Senior Buscador, the only closer like you had talked about. Just this race didn't finish the way I saw it on paper. It started the way I thought it would on paper, but nothing about the last 3/16 quarter mile of the race made any sense to the way I was handicapping the particular race. But it wasn't like it was a crazy finish, right? The best horse won, who was the favorite, and the closer picked up the pieces to run second. So it was a very logical result. I just didn't see it right in this particular race.
And the thing about the final time was 1:50-2. And these horses, when the Gulfstream Park, and this happens a lot, we see the Florida Derby races this way, they can run 147. This track was about 15 lengths slow or deep, going a mile and 1/8 than it can be. So they obviously had set the racetrack such where there might have been some horses that maybe were spinning their wheels, like First Mission. The other concern I had with First Mission, even though your handicapping was logical, was that he never really had to deal with a real hot pace in any of his races. He finished well, but they were always off moderate fractions. And when they went 46-1 on this track, that's a low 45 on a normal Gulfstream Park main track, and some of these horses just couldn't cope with it. So I give full credit to National Treasure, full credit to Senior Buscador, and we will see how many horses, if any, will come out of this race that got trounced, that will regain their form the next time they run.
Best career race by far for National Treasure. Preakness, even considering, because the Preakness trip was easy. This was not easy. He earned every bit of it. Hats off to National Treasure, winner of the Pegasus World Cup. Another tip of the cap for a filly who went out on top was Warmart. It was her career finale for the Coolmore Color Bearer. Aidan O'Brien brought this one over from Ireland off the race in Hong Kong. She's traveled the world, her second trip to the U.S., her final career start, and she came home a winner. And a lot of thanks go to English jockey Ryan Moore for a heady ride.
Top of the stretch, Castellano and main event still going. Warmart needs a way out. Integration trying to work to the clear. Catnip trying to shut the door on him. There's an 1/8 of a mile to go. Here's Warmart. She got through at the rail. What a ride! And Warmart has hit the front. The globe-trotting Warmart is clear. Outside, I'm very busy. Charging hard late. Warmart wins the Pegasus World Cup turn. Give that to Ryan Moore. A winning ride at the 8th pole in 1:44-2.
Disappointment there, of course. Integration. He didn't finish with the same sizzle we had seen against lesser competition, as my boy Graham goes crazy on us here in the background. You're a big fan of Warmart, apparently.
Well, no, I think what he was, when you were talking about integration, Graham was just trying to tell us that integration just could not cope with the fast pace in this race. He was where he was supposed to be, and then came off the bridle. And this is big boy racing right here. I mean, he'd been running against 3-year-olds. I took the bait. I thought he would get a great trip. He did. But when they started to accelerate, he went for a hole that he couldn't get through because he wasn't quick enough to do it. And Warmart, I mean, the Augusta Rodin trip, right? Sit on the inside and get through. But you still have to be able to quicken. And Warmart, to me, it's kind of sad that they're going to retire her now at age 4. She's only run 11 times. She'd been running much longer races, mile and a half. maybe she's always wanted to be a middle distance, firm grass type of filly. She broke the course record here, fractured it. They ran a mile and 8 and 144 and 2. Accelerated in the final 16th of a mile, won with something left. Daughter of Galileo, and now the decision has been made to retire her. I don't get it, but that's their horse. Right. And there was some talk, some rumblings about maybe going to Justify. Okay, I can dig that. The thing about Justify is he's such an outcross to just like everything. I mean, there's no concentration in a specific sire line or a dam line, the sire and the sire of the dam. You can literally breed any mare you want to Justify. So, God, I if they're going to do that, maybe that's the right thing to do. But the way she ran in this race, that's as good a race as I think she's ever run. But maybe I mean, she had some Grade 1 wins in her resume for sure. Won at Royal Ascot, won the Prix Vermeil at Longchamp. I was against her. I just thought she had too much traveling to do. Right. She traveled right to the winner's circles where she traveled.
The next time we might see her on the racetrack, one of her offspring in the 2027 Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf or Juvenile Fillies Turf. I mean, that's what you're looking at. Yep. Going to the breeding shed now and a full of 2025 to come next year. Knock on wood, God willing, that Warmart will see her offspring repeat and replicate that form that she showed. Like you said, middle distance, top of ground, firm ground racing. That's what we have here in the U.S. on turf. And by Justify, if that foal were to be an outstanding grass performer in the U.S., it would not be a big surprise. Now, Didia was the other winner and the big winner on Pegasus World Cup Day, Jeff, winning the filly and mare turf. The absence of Warmart certainly made that race a little bit easier, but Star Fortress didn't turn out to be the superstar that we saw in the Cardinal. Instead, it was the consistently strong Didia, who just keeps finding ways to win races, winning the filly and mare turf. Your thoughts on her?
Well, I mean, she had raced out in California a couple of runs back and beat Anna Set, and I actually gave her a little bit of a look in the Breeders' Cup filly and mare turf, which turned out to be a monster race. Obviously, I mean, you've got. You go back and look at that form and you see that, well, wow, that this was a good race. But Didia's on her best day. I mean, I don't know, I have the form in front of me, but she's won like every one but 4 or 5 races, maybe even less than that. So she knows where the wire is, and the only thing that surprised me about her is she's so close up. She was in a great spot every step of the way. I kind of thought maybe she'd be coming from way back, but she's sitting 3rd or 4th early on. I'm thinking that she's going to be tough. I couldn't possibly believe that she was going to be in front of Ruby Nell at any stage of the race, and that's where she was down the backstretch. So that was one of my misses. I got confused on that race a little bit, but not shocked that she was able to rise to the occasion.
And how good was Inspiral's win in the filly and mare turf that you talked about now? Because, I mean, she may have been the most visually impressive horse Breeders' Cup week. White Barrio, there were some others that were phenomenal, to the eye, fierceness, which we're going to see here in just a minute. But the form of that filly mare turf with Didia coming back and winning this race. We saw Warmart come out and win the Pegasus against the boys. I mean, it just tells you how great Inspiral is, and she's not done yet.
No, I mean, we get the pleasure of watching Inspiral run again this year, and I'm sure that they'll be thinking of, Breeders' Cup at the end of the year. Why not? But for Inspiral, that to me was the most impressive performance of the entire day, because I had a hunch at the time. I felt that people are not appreciating the field that she beat and the way she did it. I mean, she passed 9 horses from the 3/16 pole to the wire, and they weren't slouches. They were good horses, and she just left them for dead. That to me was amazing. And so anyway, once again, and it seems like it's happened year after year, the best performances always seem to be by the European fillies, whether they're 2-year-olds, older mares, whatever they are. They seem to bring their A game, and on that day anyway, Inspiral did, and the form is held. That's all you can say, and appreciate it.
That's a wrap on our coverage of the Pegasus World Cup for 2024. Now we're going to turn to a story that we're basically doing for the third time in 3 weeks. 2 weeks ago, we told you that Bob Baffert's horses had to be out of the barn by January 29th because Churchill Downs, instead of March 1, had moved the date up for any banned trainer to be eligible for the Kentucky Derby. Their horses had to be out of the barn by yesterday, which was the Triple Crown nomination deadline. Then last week, we told you Bob Baffert had dropped his suit, his appeal against Churchill Downs for the disqualification of Medina Spirit in the 2021 Kentucky Derby. Now the news this week, which came out yesterday, is nobody's leaving, Jeff. The deadline came and passed yesterday. The owners of the major colts for Bob Baffert's 3-year-old crop say we are staying put. That January 29th deadline had all the drama of Y2K. We thought the world was going to end on the 1st of January 2000, and it turned out the clock just turned over and nothing happened. Same thing in this Baffert story. Nothing happened yesterday.
Well, it was like a punch and counter punch here. Churchill says, okay, we're going to really top you. We're not going to allow you to even train these horses up the Derby. So on the day where nominations close, if those horses are still in your barn, you can't run them. And Baffert said, okay, I won't run them in the Derby. I'll run them in all these prep races. And then you're going to have a Kentucky Derby without winners of the prep races. What's going to happen to your Derby? And Churchill would say, well, the Derby's bigger than you. I mean, the Churchill Downs doesn't care about you. It's the Derby. It's the Derby. Yeah, that's true, but it's not going to be the Derby. If you know what's going to be the Derby this year, maybe the Preakness, if you want to know the truth, because they're going to have the Derby winner in there, and then they're going to have the best of the Bafferts. That's going to be pretty exciting, don't you think? I think what Churchill probably should have done is maybe their problem really isn't with the owners of the horses or the horses themselves. It's with Baffert. So all they basically had to do a couple of years ago, if they thought this out, was to say, and all horses from Bob Baffert can run. He just can't be listed as a trainer of record. So if they win, Baffert won't be the trainer of record. That should be enough. But what they did was they banned all these horses that they quite frankly need. Now, maybe they figure we don't need them because we're the Derby. The Derby's going to go on whether it's the Derby, whether they got Baffert or not. And Bob Baffert said, okay, fine. I've got the best horses, which he may or may not have. So we'll just say sayonara to you, and we'll point for the rest of the year because guess what? If you're not a good horse, even if you win the Derby, no one cares in July, August, September, October, or November. They kind of forget about you unless you don't remember which strike and mage. So I think it's maybe they can just get together in a room after this and figure it out. But I find it's going to be funny because there could be at least 2 and maybe 3 horses that would be major players in the Kentucky Derby that just aren't going to be there. And I don't really think the connections of these horses and Bob Baffert really care anymore.
It's interesting because, like, Churchill is emboldened by the fact that the last 2 Kentucky Derby editions didn't have Baffert, and they were the 2 highest handling Kentucky Derbies of all time, 2022, and then 2023 beat it. So the business is bigger than Bob Baffert. They've proven that the past 2 years. Reincarnate horses like that to the Derby for Baffert. It depends when it comes down to, does Baffert matter to the Derby or not, is what does he have on the first Saturday in May, right? Who's healthy and how good are these horses as we get through the trail? If the horses from this particular list that we're looking at, if 3 or 4 of these are among the top 5 horses in America at that point in time, then it's a Kentucky Derby with an asterisk to a purist who's looking for the best horses of the year to run in the Kentucky Derby. If it turns out that these horses don't make it down the trail, they don't stretch out, they get sidelined by injury, and we're going to the Kentucky Derby anyway with his big players, if he's got another reincarnate kind of horse who's left at Derby time, nobody's going to miss him. So it really all comes down to what happens between now and then. But when you look at the names of the horses on this list, Jeff, there's some awfully good ones. And, you know, it starts Coach Prime at the top, Nisos. These are horses we could see as soon as this weekend in the Bob Lewis. And, you know, these horses for Baffert, they continue to work and train towards their next potential spots. Here's Coach Prime in action working here on XBTV just a couple days ago. Yesterday, in fact, the Monday work on the 29th. I mean, what are your thoughts of this crop of Baffert horses? Are they at the top of this 3-year-old division?
I think there could be 3 in there, and I actually like Coach Prime, even though he did not run well in the low sell. Well, he didn't run badly. He just got beat. Here's a colt named Pilot Commander. I don't think we'll see the best of him until he stretches out. But Muth is obviously a proven commodity. He's very, very good. For sure. May Moon, the future star we saw last week, could be a freak. I mean, he could be a Justify type horse for sure. And then Nisos is undefeated, and I think only behind Fierceness, as far as I'm concerned, with regards to the quality that I have seen. And both of his wins were by a pole. I mean, we don't know how good he is. He continues to train like a Justify type, of course. So, and the other thing that we're forgetting about here, Jeremy, is if these colts, as good as they are, if they don't run in the Derby, that might actually be good in the long run for them, because they won't have to be, cranked up in May and then pay the price later on. There are still lots of good races. They got the Preakness, you've got the Belmont at 1.25 miles this year. Then you've got really good races in the fall, like the Travers. And if these colts avoid what is necessary to get to this Kentucky Derby, they might stay healthier than otherwise they might. So, I mean, it's if you are, and this is what Charlie Whittingham used to think about. I'm dating myself. Not that I have to date myself. I'm old, you know that. But the bottom line is that he felt that it might, for some reason, it might be too much too soon, and in the long run, they would be detrimental to their career. We'll find out if these Bob Baffert horses have an edge by not having to be wound up tight as a drum for the first Saturday in May, and have a much different type of campaign that would be less intrusive to their health.
Well, look, I just gave Churchill Downs credit based on recent history, right? That was the power play in their book. That business was great without Baffert. But now Baffert's got the power play with National Treasure, right? Did not go to the Kentucky Derby last year, skipped that race, didn't change barns, went and won the Preakness, almost won a Breeders' Cup. I mean, he took Cody's Wish right to the wire and almost won a Breeders' Cup with him, and now just won a Pegasus World Cup with him. So the Baffert argument to his clients can come back and say, yeah, we may not win the Derby, but if I could do this with National Treasure, imagine what I could do with your horse who has more natural ability than, say, National Treasure at this point in time. So Baffert also had a chip to play there because of the recent success of National Treasure. That actually really worked, I think, somewhat in his favor in this particular spot. The owners that we're talking about that stuck with Baffert, Bayoma Corporation, which is the Chu family, husband and wife team there. The old Baffert friends, Mike Pigram, Paul Whiteman and Watson and Wheatman. Then you also have Amir Zadan, who was the owner of Nisos, and also, of course, the owner of Medina Spirit back in the day. And then you've got the big conglomerate group: SF Racing, Starlight Stable, Dr. Ed Allred with his horse who won the Los Alfuturity, who's going to the Southwest this weekend. Right, so these are the owners. Yeah, when time. These are the horses who stay, or these are the the owners, I should say, who stayed with the trainer in this particular case. So it wasn't just a case of like 1 or 2. We're talking 4, 5, 6 different owners who had solidarity in this particular decision. I don't know what's right. I don't know what's wrong. It seems like the third year by Churchill Downs was punitive for you didn't apologize enough. That doesn't seem right to me. The moving the date up doesn't seem right. But it's kind of like a WWF match where they take 2 bad guys and put them against each other, right? Yeah. You're not supposed to root for the Iron Sheik. So I don't know, when you kind of match Churchill Downs up against Baffert in this case, I don't know that there's a clear-cut public sentiment on who's right and who's wrong, because they're kind of both coming from the role of the heel in this particular case. And so you have the guy who was caught cheating and with the violation. You have the track who's kind of moving the goalpost and changing the rules, the corporation that's doing it. I don't know. There's no winner in this at all. No. And we'll see. Maybe the big winner of this could be the Preakness Stakes. It could be an all-time Preakness on what will be the final Preakness at Pimlico proper, before moving on to Laurel and a new Pimlico. So this could be a very interesting Preakness Stakes for many sentimental reasons, and also some real kind of aggressive news lines, when we get to the Preakness Stakes. Interesting times that we live in, Mr. Siegel.
Yep.
Let's move on from this particular topic to our Triple Crown tracker, and it dovetails right in. This is where we talk a little bit more about the racing side of things on the Triple Crown tracker. I've got my new top 10 up posted for Countdown to the Crown from last week, but there's a little change now because trainer Bill Mott reported to Dave Grenig of the Racing Forum that a couple of his horses are not going to head towards the upcoming prep races. Parchment Paper is going to be sent to the farm. Knightsbridge is a horse who I really liked a lot. Had him as high as number 3 last week. Knightsbridge is not going to race now until at least March. So I moved that one out of my top 10, and Knightsbridge still down towards the bottom of my top 20. I moved out completely the runner Parchment Paper since he's going to the farm and is going to get some time off. Here's my updated top 10. It'll be released this Friday. I did not remove Nisos or Muth from my top 10. They're ineligible for the Kentucky Derby, but it's Countdown to the Crown, not Countdown to the Derby. They are major players, Jeff, towards the Preakness and, of course, maybe the Belmont as well. Fierceness stays number 1 in here. Kind of a little bit of a change. Sierra Leone moves up by default a bit. That is the runner-up in the Remsen Stakes for Chad Brown. That one's headed towards the Risen Star. Could meet up with Sneed in there, a horse I'm very high on. So some logical horses. A lot of people like Fierceness, Niso, Smooth, but a couple horses in there that are a little off the radar, I think, in Sierra Leone and certainly in Sneed.
Well, what I noticed about this list, if you were just going to use it for a Derby countdown, I mean, it does look like Fierceness has now got a huge edge because without Nisos in there and Muth and whatever else Bob can unleash between now and then, without those in there, I like Sierra Leone. I think he's a classic Derby type of horse. He's not Fierceness though yet, not quite,
right.
For sure. And then you go down the list of 6 through 10, and you see some nice horses like Dornoch, who I think has got a lot of ability. Track Phantom has done nothing wrong recently, but man, from what I have seen at Fierceness, not only on Breeders' Cup Day, and of course his debut at Saratoga, which was breathtaking, but the way he's been working and breezing lately, I mean, to me, he is right now head and shoulders. I can say that without the Baffert horses in the Derby. But if he were to win the Derby and Nisos goes out and does everything that I'm kind of expecting he'll be doing in prep races, you're right. I mean, that Preakness will be, at least for people in the industry, that will be the stallion maker race. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And maybe the general average, the general public might not realize it, but we will. I'm looking forward to the Triple Crown this year because there'll be new shooters, and the new shooters this year aren't going to be leftovers. They're going to be real horses.
No, and the new shooters have been awfully effective in the last couple of years after not for decades, haven't really any impact at all towards the Preakness. Fierceness will be in action on Saturday at Gulfstream Park in the Holy Bull Stakes. That field is already drawn. 8 to go in there. Fierceness drew the 7-hole, be ridden again by John Velasquez, who rode him to victory in the Breeders' Cup last time. We'll take a look at that juvenile in just a moment. 4 horses out of the Mucho Macho Man Stakes are back, including Otello, the winner of the Mucho Macho Man for Christophe Clement, a son of Curlin and Isabella Singh. So Otello brings his good pedigree, stretches out around 2 turns for the first time. But Jeff, you like those Curlins. The longer they go and the more experience they get. So Otello probably the main challenger in there to Fierceness. But if he runs back to his Breeders' Cup juvenile, look out, everybody.
Fierceness grabs the lead. Muth right up alongside. General Partner gives way and is back into 3rd. And they're into the stretch. And it's Fierceness and Muth. The 2 of them turning for home with Fierceness in front. Fierceness is opened up here to a 2-length lead. Muth is 2nd, then Timberlake down the outside, but it is going to be Fierceness and John Velasquez. Oh, they're running away. Fierceness, a powerhouse win. And then
Fierceness, he's back, the champ. We've seen some 2-year-old champs come to the Holy Bull and stumble a bit. Literally, Hansen, one that comes to mind, and got beat, back in the day. So it can happen. We'll see. But it would take, I think, a stumble, a setback for Fierceness to get beat Saturday in the Holy Bull. Also on Saturday, there are 3 other major Triple Crown preps around the country. Of course, there'll be the Robert Lewis Stakes out at Santa Anita, the Withers in New York, and at Oaklawn, they've already drawn the Southwest Stakes, $800,000 for a grade 3 going a mile and 16 in the last weekend of January. Oh man, what in the world? It's like Delta jackpot days when you're giving away that kind of money in the wintertime. The Southwest Stakes, Jeff, drew a capacity field of 12 amongst those in there. Springboard Mile winner Otto the Conqueror for Steve Asmussen. Asmussen's got another one in there though named Carbone, coming off a big win at Oaklawn that was just fabulous. And I know you wanted to show the fans this race. Let's go back to that win. I believe it was New Year's Eve. It was Carbone, second time starter in an allowance company, winning back to back to start off his career.
Carbone opens up that lead to a length and a quarter. Ricardo Santana Jr. took a peek back, and he's got to like what he sees. Lightline continues to charge from towards the back of the field. He looks like the main threat to Carbone. Again, this race will end at the 16th pole. Carbone asked for his best. A 3-length lead now as he shoots away. Lightline second, Andy's Candy third. Carbone, did he get the 2 turns? The answer is a decisive yes. Carbone. Steve Asmussen with a big day today.
Now, Matt Dinnerman was saying about the 2-turn question in that race because this is the son of champion sprinter Mottoli. So he did answer that 2-turn question on the stretch out Carbone. Amongst the others in that Southwest Stakes full field of 12 are Winstock for Bob Baffert. We talked about him already, the one owned by Dr. Ed Allred and Jack Liebau. This is a horse Los Al Futurity winner last time out for Baffert. Now hitting the road. Baffert is going to hit the road to Oaklawn ad nauseum this spring.
Yeah, he's got Winstock there. But the thing about Winstock is his both wins, the maiden win and then the Los Al Futurity, were accomplished in gate-to-wire fashion. So the same issue we talked about last week, he's not getting in front of Carbone, I don't think. Carbone won his debut by 8 sprinting, and then came back and stretched it off that one sprint and won again. And that they're not changing his style. Santana's not taken back, right? So Carbone will be in front. Now we'll find out if Winstock can sit, and then we'll see if Carbone will be able to take on tougher rivals. That was just the non-winners of 2 that he won, making a stakes debut. He's listed at 9-2 in the morning line. I think he'll probably be shorter than that, regardless. But he still has to go out and prove that he can do something other than maybe win gate to wire. There's another horse in this race named Maycox Bay who earned a 95 Bayern number when he won an allowance race at Fairgrounds, but that was an off-the-turfer, and it was gate to wire. You know as well as I do, Jeremy, horses can look great when they make the lead. Mm-hmm. And then when all of a sudden, when they don't make the lead, they aren't so great anymore, right? Right. So this is a really intriguing race, who knows? Maybe the Remington Park shipper out of the Conqueror will be able to sit by. But he's basically a speed horse. So we're going to learn a lot about some of these horses at Oaklawn. And it's going to take a pretty good colt to win it. Unless one goes, everybody else takes back. Right. And then he just roll all the way. Then we haven't learned anything. So I'm really looking forward to the Oaklawn race, the Southwest at Oaklawn Park.
If you haven't handicapped Oaklawn this season and you're just checking in for the Southwest, you really have to know about the weather that it's been in Hot Springs this year. That track has been closed for multiple days at a time. In fact, shut down for over a week, where locally based horses did not get to train. And when they got back to racing this weekend, there were horses from Turfway and coming from all over the country that were winning races from off the pace because they were fit and they were coming from places where they could keep training. So it's going to change a little bit and shift because they're back to training at Oaklawn now, but those horses are going to take a little while to make up for that missed training time. So if I'm gambling on Oaklawn this week, especially earlier in the week, and as it goes a little longer and goes longer, then these horses are going to get their fitness back. But for now, you might want to take horses from out of town, and that gives your Windstocks and horses like that coming in from Maycox Bay, coming in from Fairgrounds. Those Fairgrounds and out of town shippers might have their way at Oaklawn again for another couple of weeks before the local horses get all their fitness back. They did miss quite a bit of training time.
Good handicapping advice there for sure.
Let's go to our fifth topic on the board this week. This is our Stars of Tomorrow. Of course, each week we try to give you a couple horses coming out of the maiden or the lesser ranks that you may not have seen yet that could have a big say in races down the road. And these just happen to be 2 more 3-year-olds that could point their way towards the Triple Crown Trail. Brad Cox and Todd Pletcher, surprise, they've got a couple more. Brad Cox, he had one from by Justify named Just a Touch, who won on Saturday at Fairgrounds impressively in race number 2 at a short price.
And Gun Party looks to engage with the rail, Just a Touch, and Silver Halo in the final quarter of a mile. Half mile, 46.10 seconds for Florent Giroux, this newcomer. And it's Just a Touch who's pulled clear from Silver Halo. Gun Party's now second. second with Capital Connection. Evan on Earth is a 1 pace now. They're close to home. It's just a touch. Just a touch at 1-2. Just a touch. A first out victory by 4. Gun.
Jeff, let's take this one first before we look at the Pletcher winner. Just a touch, another son of Justify who seems to be cranking them out now.
You know, the first thing I look at when I see the chart, the first thing that catches my eye is what odds did this horse go off of? Was he a surprise? Was he like 7-1? And did he run in on him? Maybe it was the mud. Maybe, who knows? This horse was 50 cents in the dollar. He was supposed to win this way because he obviously trained great. He wins for fun. He runs the last quarter in 24 and small change. He's by Justify and out of a mare by Tappet. Brad Cox has a lot of these, and sometimes they go on and sometimes they get exposed. I don't think just a touch is going to get exposed for a while to me, if ever, because this was the other thing I look at, Jeremy, is this colt is an athlete. He's such a beautiful mover. He's got such a long stride, effortless. I mean, he runs like a horse, like a good colt's supposed to look like. He's an athlete. So for him to win first time out like this, it's not too late. I don't know what the plans are, but man, I mean, Just a Touch is a future star, if not a present one already. Can't wait to see where he goes next.
The tough thing about staying local is they've got a 1 1/8 and then a 1 3/16 left in the Risen Star and the Louisiana Derby. To come off one sprint race like that and go that far next time probably means he's hitting the road. So there are a lot of different places you could go with a horse like this, but you don't want to go to a 1 1/8 next start, I don't think, in the Risen Star. So I think you're going to see this horse on the road just a touch. There are plenty of places you could go. The Rebel at a 1 1/16 at Oaklawn. This would be a great horse for the Gotham. And Brad Cox runs horses in the winter in New York. I could see this horse going Gotham and then see what you've got from there. A good natural step from this sprint race to the 1-turn mile, and then go long and see if you got yourself a Derby horse in the Bluegrass or something like that. Wood Memorial at the end of the trail. But he's got a good one here. In fact, I think he's going to crack the top 20 on Countdown this weekend. I think he's going to be down. This was one of the more impressive horses we've seen around the country breaking his maiden. There was another one earlier in the day, or I don't know what. Yeah, it was a little bit earlier in the day because they had the early post time on Pegasus Day at Gulfstream Park. Second race on the card, 7 furlong maiden special. It's the exact same race that Mage won last year in his debut before becoming a Kentucky Derby winner. So it is not too late in the modern era to debut on the Pegasus undercard at 7/8 of a mile and become the Kentucky Derby winner. Will we see deja vu? Todd Pletcher hopes so.
Here's Speakeasy to have a crack at him from second. Up on the outside, Big City is now third. Batten Down's flattened out a touch. He's back fourth. These top two sprint away. On the outside, Speakeasy. Toward the inside, it's Victory Avenue. There's an 1/8 of a mile left, and Speakeasy doing slightly the better work. Victory Avenue tries to go with him. Back to third, Big City, then Batten Down. Final 16th of a mile, Speakeasy. And Irene Ortiz Jr., your second race winners. Speakeasy by 2.5.
So Speakeasy, what do we make of this one out of the Pletcher barn? Cox, Pletcher, they're loaded with these they just keep refilling the silo.
100 buyer, you can't ignore that. I mean, that's good enough to win almost any prep race for 3-year-olds this time of the year. And it shocked me because we had Speakeasy on video in our XPTV working with another horse in this race, My True Colors of Baffert's. I'm sorry, of Pletcher's. Watch the work, and I mean, you'd swear that My True Colors was the better of the two. Went easier, finished in front, and yet Speakeasy from the rail got more play and ran lights out. I don't know where this came from. I went back and watched the video to make sure they had the right horses identified. They did, so I can't use that as an excuse. This was a terrific race, and being by constitution, there's no reason why he won't run farther. And he did it the right way. He didn't break all that well. He rushed up inside, tough spot to be. Went after Victory Avenue and then collared him and went by easily. Victory Avenue was quote unquote supposed to win because he really had trained like a good colt, and he ran a winning race. This race at Victory Avenue, who finished second and almost 4 clear of everybody else, would have been good enough to win 19 out of 20 maiden races. Yeah. Speakeasy did it. They were all kind of spread out. Big City, who was a distant third, had run well over the track, had a benefit from that. I thought he was going to develop into a nice colt. This colt was for real. At least on this day, he was for real. And again, now it's a matter of, I think he probably surprised Todd a little bit too.
Yeah.
Now they have to reevaluate. Well, what do we really have here? We have a very fast colt who won going 7/8 first time out, had to overcome a little bit of a rough trip and still did it. Man, I think we have to look at Speakeasy in a whole different context. And certainly we were looking at him after his workouts, which were not impressive.
Yeah, I think it's a Tampa kind of horse. Pletcher sends horses over there and coming off the 7/8 of a mile, they don't have to go far at Tampa, mile and a 16th in terms of distance. You don't have to go far.
Right.
So that would be a good natural move from a 7/8 of a mile debut to that mile and a 16th next against mid-level competition over at Tampa. That could be a horse. You talked about the runner-up in that race. What was the Avenue?
Victory Avenue. Yeah.
Victory Avenue.
Yeah.
The connections to Victory Avenue, the same ones that had Mage. They thought they had Mage part
Oh,
2
yeah.
debuting. Gustavo Delgado and a lot of the same owners involved in that horse, and they ran a lights out race. Again, it was just not quite good enough, but they could be back on the trail.
Sure.
That particular horse in another race, you go break the maiden next time and then find a stakes race somewhere and see what you've got. But worked for him last year. We will see if that Pegasus undercard can produce another Kentucky Derby starter, much less winner, like we did with Mage a year ago. So that wraps up our 5 topics this week on It's Official. Let's review them for you quickly. The Pegasus postscript. We talk about how the career best performance from National Treasure puts him atop the older horse rankings right now. Warmart, she sizzled in the finale. She goes off to the breeding shed, perhaps to justify a winner in the Pegasus Filly and Mare Turf. As for Bob Baffert, all of his owners are saying, we're keeping the horses with you, and we will see them at the Preakness and Belmont, but not the Kentucky Derby. Our Triple Crown tracker gave you a preview of 4 big stakes races coming up this weekend, including the return of Fierceness, the number 1 ranked horse in my countdown rankings, and also the champion 2-year-old of last year, winner of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. And our stars of tomorrow gave you 1 for Brad Cox, just a touch, and 1 for Todd Pletcher, named Speakeasy, both highly, highly impressive winners. These 5 topics are now official because Jeff Siegel and I said so. That's the way we play the game, and we'll do it all again next week with 5 more topics. A little bonus topic here this week is we've got a minute left, just a little news nugget. If you enjoyed Pegasus World Cup Day, well, we're moving it west. The first racing announced at Pegasus this year that there's going to be a California Crown race replacing the Awesome Again Stakes in late September. So that big Breeders' Cup prep weekend at Santa Anita, about 4 or 5 weeks out from the Breeders' Cup, now going to be the California Crown. You can expect a big West Coast party there, Jeff.
Yeah, for sure. Looking forward to that. We have not heard what purses will be like. They're going to try to figure that out and see how much they can spend. But I think the racing will be great. Can't wait for that. Last Saturday in September, timing perfect for the Breeders' Cup, which of course is in California. So I think there'll be a lot of hustling involved and hustling stables to come out for. If you have one, why not prep out here? And then the money again will be good. And maybe it's I don't know. Maybe it's the start of something big here. We could use a signature day out here at Santa Anita, and this could be it in the long run. Who knows?
Yeah, fall, good time of year for a big race like that, right before the Keeneland meet gets rocking and rolling. So could be a centerpiece event. We'll know more details. We're not giving you a whole lot of details on the California Crown because we don't have them. We will know more as the weeks and months unfold, and we'll pass them along to you here on It's Official. So on behalf of everyone who put on the Pegasus show this past week, my partner, Jeff Siegel, I'm Jeremy Plonk. Have a great week, and we will talk to you on Friday when we handicap not only those 4 big prep races around the Triple Crown scene, but all the major stakes races in the U.S. on our Friday podcast, First Call. Have a great week, everybody.